I was leaning against the refrigerator. All of a sudden, he was against me and stuck his tongue in my mouth, and I bit it as hard as I could. And so he's spitting blood, and he goes and he calls Jim over and he goes, he bit my tongue! He bit my tongue! And then when we got home from this tour, like a couple weeks later, there was a letter in the mail from Michael, very sincerely, very nice, apologizing for, he said, you know, I'm a misanthrope and I'm sorry that I took it out on you that night. I didn't write back, but I thought, you know, hey man, no skin off my teeth, and I'm not bummed, and thanks for the letter, it's really cool.
See what I mean? This is exactly the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That's a great story.
So the reason I say that I didn't know Scratch Acid wasn't a Seattle band was because in the mid-'80s, we were kind of like, you know, like we liked punk rock, we loved Black Flag, and we liked Led Zeppelin and all that. And Scratch Acid made as much sense as Skin Yard or any of those other bands. You fit in here so perfectly. And it's art, but it's also the fact that you had the riff, you had the ideas. I mean, it was a perfect fit. So, you know, until 1990, I didn't know you weren't from here. And then Austin, Seattle, it makes sense. But that whole New York thing, that whole, okay.
No, I put them, you remember, I would have group Scratch Acid with like Meth Mensch, remember these guys? Meth Mensch? It was Wisconsin.
Mech Mensch?
I could be mispronouncing the name. Meth Mensch?
Ich weiß nicht.
Ich weiß es nicht, yeah. No, Killdozer. All those bands.
Well, that's a fun
You
thing.
toured with them. You guys were tight.
Sure, Killdozer and Laughing Lions and stuff. And like several years ago, Touch and Go they celebrated their 25th anniversary, and my buddy Buzz from the Melvins suggested that instead of having all those bands that were Touch and Go bands play, he suggested that they try to get the birthday party to reunite. Because, you know, Killdozer, Laughing Lions, it's all the same thing.
Do you guys know the Eugene?
Of course.
Eugene was our contribution to that.
For Seattle, I would go back to Malfunction.
Yeah!
That was the first band from Seattle that I thought was doing completely crazy shit.
But these are the bands that were no longer region. When you were in hardcore, you always thought about the Boston sound, the New York sound, the LA sound. You were the start of those bands that you went, well, this is just the good shit. This is Rape Man, this is Big Black, this is you guys. You know what I mean? And Oxbow is carrying that, you know. But that's the energy. And I think that's when regionalism fell, and like a certain internationalism of punk, post-punk pride kind of came in. And did you feel that was something necessary to really push forward with your band?
No. It was trying to. No, I don't think we had any high hopes. I don't think we had any sort of vision or anything like that. God, I remember the idea of making a cassette and being able to sell it to people you don't even know was fucking thrilling. And then we sold like 1,000 records, which is like, that's like gold, punk rock gold. I don't think that we had any sort of forward vision as like, you know, we're doing anything worthwhile.
You were on that one comp, and I forget the name of it. Cow was in the title. Moo Moo Cow. Or,
Moo Cow.
And then it got onto Sub Pop 100, which was out of Olympia at the time. And like that's probably why I thought you were Seattle. But the main thing was like this is the shit to get a part of. But you were still playing basically to punk rock audiences. Did you have a lot of any kind of bad feedback from like punk rock audiences at the time? Or?
I'm sure we did. It's kind of hard to remember. I mean, I do remember like we had toured most of the U.S. and Europe before we came to the West Coast, and I was scared to go to L.A. I thought they're gonna beat the fuck out of me. Fortunately, they didn't. But yeah, I know we had some bad reactions, but I don't know if it was necessarily because of dumbass skinheads or whatever in the audience.
Have you guys ever thought about just completely fucking selling out? You bring this up in the movie.
Thought about it.
Kidding? I don't know how he's going to answer, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
You mentioned that.
I'd like to talk about Oxford, but really like to talk about these Skechers. It's hard to go to the grocery store with nothing in your fucking pocket but 57 cents, man. Somebody asked us in Japan, "Oh, you are supposed to sell out?" Go, what do you mean sell out? If anybody's having any conversation with me at all about doing something for cash, they're already insane, right? So it's not like they're gonna, like Oxford is gonna start doing, pop for TV commercials. It's impossible. Not because we can't, but because we choose not to. But if somebody said, we'll give you $100,000 for some TV commercial. Well, I mean, we've sold our music to movies, I think, once, and once had it stolen by a famous director, Oliver Stone.
Really? For what?
If you listen to, watch that movie U-Turn, there's a section where there's an opening guitar part from an Oxford song. It stops before the vocal comes in. A friend of mine was a West Coast bureau chief for Spin magazine. He goes, well, you know how Stone picks his music for his movies. Takes his music director, his MD, and they drive around, like for Natural Born Killers. He and Trent Reznor just drove around the desert, put in CD after CD. He goes, use that part, use that part, use that part. But I could never convince anybody of this. Which you have to know that I'm fucking litigation crazy. So I've actually sued like Warner Brothers and sued Intel, and I've won both of these lawsuits. So
You're very mindful.
yeah, if I made more money suing the Warner Brothers for the Irish band Whipping Boy than I did my whole time at Whipping Boy. But I never would have pursued it had the lawyer not been so fucking insulting. I called the guy and he's like, I got some dumb hardcore kid here. I said, tell you what, why don't I just give you $200 and you fuck off? And I said, is that what you think it would cost if I got a TRO against you? You had to pull every single one of their records from every record store in America. Could you do that for $200? He says, well, what about $2,000? And I was like, this is not going to end well for either of us. So we got up to $22,000. I got to Ireland later. I was talking about it loudly at a bar. I forgot how small Dublin is. And the guys, I'm friends with those guys. It actually ruined the band. I said, wow, fuck those guys. They had several chances to fucking change the name. So then, my grandfather claused it. I check online because I need money. I see they're using the name, they're having reunions, and I write the guys back and say, if you put out new stuff, I'm gonna fucking treble the damages and sue you again. They're like, why don't you just leave us alone? I was like, I could if I would, So Scion is underwriting my February-March tour with Scott Kelly. So I'm perfectly happy to drive a beautiful Scion and take beautiful Scion cash. Like I said, I don't know how David's going to answer, but cash is much better than no cash.
Now, you had a big licensing break in the 90s, right? Jesus Lizard got something into a movie or a commercial big time. I forget what it was.
We had music in Clerks, and we had music in Amateur. I think both of those we got like $80.
No way.
Well, we got some money.
Somebody got some money. Look at you.
Neither of those movies
It's like
are
a 4th edition double.
What are you kidding? Clerks was a huge movie.
Yeah.
You need to look at the members of Jesus Lizard and see who's dressing night one.
We should track down that.
Whoever's coming to practice in a fur coat, that's the guy. We only made $80, David.
No, we made some money. It wasn't a lot of money. I mean, I have some idea of what you can do like these days if you get something in a commercial.
Yeah.
They pay you a shit ton, but Clerks and Amateurs, neither of those were.
Yezu had a 20-second clip of one of their songs in a commercial, $19,000. Yeah.
My
ass hurts just to say that.
Well, don't say it.
I was the publicist for a band called the Black Angels, and they got a $50,000 offer from Toyota in Australia for an internet commercial, and they turned it down because there were a bunch of fucking hippies in a house outside of Austin. And they were like, oh, fuck this shit. We're not going to take that money. And I was like, I spend the whole day, like, well, Toyota's not a bad company. In terms of the ecology, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And like, but they never took it. Of course, they take it now. They're on Interscope and everything.
You know what? If people are completely anti-money, I really have oodles of fucking respect for that. But then never ask me for a fucking nickel.
That's called European tour.
Yeah.
$50,000 is being able to tour wherever you want for a few months. The van, the air flight, all that shit. I think we should turn it over to anybody who has any questions, because I know that you guys have been talking a lot and going to be playing tonight. Thank you so much for your time on this. I love you guys. You guys are amazing. Does anybody have any questions for David or for Eugene? Yes, in the back.
Question for David. What's your favorite Dr. Seuss book?
My favorite Dr. Seuss book? I can't read. The one with the picture on the front?
You got one, Eugene?
He didn't ask me.
Anybody else? I asked all the questions.
Peter, what's your question?
Where are we going for dinner?
I think that Thai place.
It's good. Whoever's over there. Go ahead.
David, are you ever going to have an art show in Seattle?
Yes.
Yeah! Fuck yeah!
She's gonna help you set it up. She's gonna help you set it up. It's too easy.
Yeah, April, you need to set it up for me.
Rock LaRue. Can we ask them?
Suggestions, nothing to help.
Guy with his hand up. You back here?
For Eugene, can you tell everybody about blackface? Because I'm very curious about that.
Woo! I'm sorry, I was going to ask that. Thank you very much. Chuck Dukowski?
Yeah, I was down there last weekend. I recently told Chuck, I said, you know what? I'm not doing those fucking 8-hour-a-day Black Flag rehearsals. Fuck that, man. I don't do that with Oxbow. I'm not doing it for you guys. But I was down there last weekend and we did 8-hour rehearsals because just the time slips away. But he had wanted to do all the songs that he had written, right, when Greg kicked him out of Black Flag. And I've been bugging him about it for a long time. And he finally relented and said, well, we should do it. And I said, well, what do you want to call it? And he said, well, let's call it Blackface. I go, that's a great name, man. It's like just like when I heard Black Flag for the first time. It's got the same sort of comic thing and then the gravitas. And then he talked to Ian Mackay. And Ian said, oh man, I don't know about that. You got a bad history with Swan and you used to wear that redneck cap and then you were in that movie with a little Hitler mustache. Completely spooked, pardon. Completely spooked Chuck. And so Chuck came and said, I want to change your name. And Ian says we should change it to Black Soul. And I immediately let the guys at the label know. We had 2 shows in December and we canceled the shows. The label guy kicked us off of Hydra Head after that 1 7-inch. And Chuck relented and said, well, if the only Negro in the band is not bothered by name, maybe it's okay. So, but we rehearsed 16 hours last weekend, and we will be playing next year. So, it's kind of, I tell you, I have a lot more respect for. I mean, the songs that were unreleased Black Flag songs are really eerie because he starts playing them, and it feels like you had a head injury because it feels like a Black Flag song. But you don't know it. It's like all of a sudden this Black Flag-esque song. But we're also doing some of the older songs, but only the ones that Chuck has written. And I have much more respect for. I mean, Henry is not that tuneful of a vocalist, but to do those songs is not fucking easy by any stretch, either to play them or to sing them. So it'll be interesting to play these shows, and we're gonna tour. That's a plan. So. When Oxbow's not touring, so.
Wait, it's you and Ian and Chuck?
That would be great. That would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Ian and I had spent 2 hours arguing in Tesco V's backyard about guilty of being white. And at the end of it, Ian told me, I'll fight anybody. I'll even fight a guy like you if I'm angry enough. I'm not scared of you. So it's interesting that he's had a latter-day conversion and feels racially sensitive about things.
That qualifies as a question. I have one
You guys trying to
question.
put me on fucking Front Street with that year question. That was 1982. I was only 2 years old then.
You were in SWAT.
No, I wasn't in SWAT. I'm talking about Chuck.
I was.
No.